Mr. Michael. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and call the emergency meeting Friday, March the 13th, 2020, 4:30 p.m. City of Lamarque. Let the record reflect that all members of council are present with the exception of Ms. McCauley, who has joined us by telephone in a non-voting role, not wanting to take the baby out under these circumstances. Item 3A is new business discussion, possible action regarding declaration of local state of disaster for the city of Lamarque, Texas, which includes an ordinance E-2020-0001 prepared and sent in by Attorney Dira. And then I also have the original declaration in front of me. LaPorte and other cities have already done this today since we had our first case of coronavirus in Galveston County, and I'll let you go through the series of events, please, Mr. Jones.
Mayor, City Council, unfortunately, we're facing something here that seems to be rapidly changing and is something we still don't have very many answers for. We're just getting a lot more questions as we go along, but what we do know at this point is that we did have our first confirmed case here in Galveston County. The case was confirmed yesterday. We were notified about it today. The federal government declared a federal disaster this morning for all 50 states. Our governor declared a state disaster about 12 o'clock today, I believe it was, for all counties in the state of Texas to open up the avenues that we would need if this continues to progress. Numerous cities around us, counties around us, as we've seen during the course of the week with Houston and some other places, have taken some pretty serious measures to limit limit interactions between people in an attempt to try to slow down the spread of this virus. What we do know as far as the spread goes, it's a 14-day incubation period. Which means that you could be carrying it for up to 14 days before you even exhibit any symptoms, but yet could be spreading it. We did hear when the county health district gave their brief at 2 o'clock this afternoon that there are other people within Galveston County that are being monitored. They didn't say how many. They didn't say what the situation was with those people, but they did say that there was other people that were being monitored, including other people who had been through CDC screening. Reality is, it appears that the majority of the spread that's happened with this at this point has been from people who have traveled abroad. The fear, the concern, what everybody's trying to limit is the spread locally for people that have come in contact, that have been affected, that have a possibility to be spreading this, to limit their interactions with other people. We've seen a lot of requests for people to self-quarantine. Unfortunately, we've also seen the other side of it too, where we got people that our grocery stores are empty. Supplies are in pretty short supply right now. As a city, up to this point, we had taken some precautionary steps, including with fire, talking about our emergency responders taking necessary precautions in their interactions with our citizens to make sure that we're trying to keep them healthy and make sure that they're able to continue to operate and respond to our emergency needs. This afternoon, went ahead and closed down the library to limit exposure to people at the library. We've canceled one committee meeting so far, three committee meetings so far, committees, boards, and commission meetings so far to limit exposure at those as well. I'll also have some other measures that I'm going to be looking at on Monday, taking on Monday to try to limit some more stuff. We have the ability to limit our interaction with citizens when it comes to utility bill payment. They can pay through the drive-through, online, via mail, or at the kiosk up front. So we're going to be looking at closing the front doors and limiting that exposure. So it's not just the exposure of our employees with those citizens when they come in, but if that citizen is sick when they come in, anything that they touch, anything that they breathe on or cough on or sneeze on, now that can carry that virus for up to 9 days. So we're looking at limiting as much interaction as we can. Boards and commission members being canceled temporarily. We talked a little bit about the fire department precautions. We're going to take similar precautions as the police department and with our public works employees, as they're the ones that deal with the majority of the citizens on a daily basis besides our utility billing staff. Our permitting process, we can do some of the permitting online, and we're going to start looking at how we can limit interactions in our permitting process on Monday as well. We'll also be looking, I'm going to be meeting with the rest of the department directors individually on Monday to talk about making sure, one, that we maintain all of our services, but how we can limit those interactions and protect our employees, and make sure that we don't get our employees sick and thereby spread it to other citizens as well. And then the last thing that I've got on here is we're going to cancel any out of town trainings or meetings that we have. We're going to cancel all those until we see the full extent of this. You know, I've been texting and emailing you guys over the last couple of days about what's happened and where we're at, and this is so rapidly changing. It's a growing concern for everybody. And as a city, our paramount responsibility is the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. So anything we can do to protect our citizens, to educate them, and to make sure that we're doing our part in keeping this from spreading, I think we need to do.
Thank you. Any questions for our team before we?
Absolutely.
How's our, how are we equipping the EMS if they have to respond to somebody? And if somebody's sick, they take them in, is there a designated hospital in this that we have to go to?
So I'll answer some of this, and I'll let Chief add into this too. Last week, we implemented basically a coronavirus policy for dispatch. So if somebody calls in and says that they're sick, there's some questions that they're to be asked so that we can kind of try to determine if they're potentially sick from this or if it's something else to kind of limit that exposure. We've talked about a number of measures, from limiting the number of medics on each vehicle so that we only have one medic on each vehicle instead of two. So if somebody is exposed, we limit our exposure that way. We've talked about a bunch of other measures that would, face masks, gloves, all those things that would limit exposure as well, and keeping things disinfected as well as we can. I do not believe we don't have a hospital designated at this point where we're supposed to take anybody. We're still waiting for some additional guidance from, I think everybody's still kind of open to.
Still waiting for the county to designate a place?
They have not, the county has not designated a place yet.
Okay. I think Houston, I'm not sure, but I've heard that they designated them time. What if this thing progresses on, it's probably too early, if there was a death at a home or something, would our emergency personnel pick up the body, or would it be a designated funeral home? How would they handle that?
Chief?
I would imagine it would probably be the funeral home, but we would have our limited exposure at first running, depending on the length of time the victim was down, on what our exposure was, if we need to run any strips in that. In this past week, as Mr. Jackson had mentioned to you, we worked with, actually Texas City worked directly with our medical director and put together a draft policy for recommendations for our first response, from our dispatch to our passing on the patient to the hospital. And we've implemented that this week, where it even includes if we have to intubate a patient, if there's going to be any aerosol type activity, how we're to perform and what our follow-up actions are.
One other question, with the state declaring this emergency, not that anybody would do it, but just in case, would this prevent any developer from trying to push through a proposed plan within that 30-day window? Would this throw that window, that 30-day approval process out?
In my discussions, so one of the questions that or one of the comments in yesterday's news conference with the governor was how state law, if there's state laws, now that he's declared an emergency, if there's state law that is making it harder for us to do whatever we're trying to do to limit it here, he can supersede that law now.
Okay.
So one of the discussions was that I had a discussion with the city attorney on this. If we did have somebody that filed during that time frame, she's not concerned with us being able to talk to them and say, look, what, can you just withdraw it until we get to the end of the 30, and then we'll put it back in. And she didn't see it being an issue.
Okay. I'm good.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Jackson, Section 1 of this ordinance, this proposed ordinance, says the city of Lamarck hereby declares that those persons under investigations, persons under management, and quarantine persons remain within confines of their homes or in a safe, secure facilities during the quarantine period following the their exposure to the virus. How do we determine who's under investigation, who's under management, and who's under quarantine? Quarantine and management surely could be found in hospitals or under doctor's care. How do we find those under investigation? Who does that?
The county health department does that.
Secondly, in the second section of this, I have a question about this sentence. Help me understand this. The City Council of the City of Lamarck, Texas declares that it would have passed each and every part of the same notwithstanding the omission of any such parts, thus declared to be invalid or unconstitutional, whether there be one or more parts. Are we suggesting that there's a possibility that this ordinance or parts of this ordinance can be unconstitutional?
No, most attorneys will put in a catch-all like that, so if somebody does challenge one part of the ordinance somehow, that it doesn't hold the others invalid until that challenge is done. There's a catch-all in almost all our city contracts like that.
And thirdly, and this is the biggest problem I have, I don't have a problem with the emergency declaration, but I do have a problem with what looks like Section 3. Are we suggesting that folks that are found in violation, first of all, what does being found in violation mean?
Okay, you're in Section 3 of the ordinance.
Yes. It says any person who shall violate any provision of this ordinance. So how are we going to figure out if they violated the provision, and what considerations will be given to those that perhaps violate the provision, but they have certain needs, emergency needs, or certain other concerns or issues that they have to tend to?
You know, obviously we'd look at that at a case-by-case basis, and because it's under an emergency declaration, that would be brought to council.
Would this be considered a Class C misdemeanor?
I would say it would be lowest level.
Okay, so if it's lowest level, and here's why I don't understand why, why Chief Jackson is not here. If it is the lowest level, and I'm not a lawyer, and I don't claim to know everything about our ordinances, but I thought that a Class C misdemeanor was a $500 fine. How do we get to 2,000? And why would we want to fine people anyway?
Well, so first of all, this was written by the city attorney to comply with state law, and so that may be a provision in state law. The reason Chief Jackson's not here is because he's on vacation.
Okay.
So I didn't call him in for the meeting and cut his vacation right in the middle of it. So everything that was put in this was put in this so that it would be it would equate to state law. So that $2,000 provision is probably in the state health code
Okay.
versus
Okay.
the other.
Okay. So that's simply a state provision.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's my main concern with Section 3. I don't want to criminalize people who are trying to go about their business, trying to survive. That's silly.
And I think we saw a prime example of that today. We know, there's no doubt, there's obviously no doubt that there are people walking around right now that are carrying the virus that don't know because of the incubation period. Then we saw the example on JetBlue this morning, where the guy went and took a test because he didn't feel good and he met all the symptoms, took the test, jumped on a plane and flew from New York to Florida, got off the plane in Florida and got his results and found out he was positive, and then notified the airline. It's like, okay, you had all the symptoms and they told you to keep yourself self-quarantined, and then you went and purposely exposed the public to this. I think I think that's kind of what we're getting at here, is if somebody's knowingly doing it after they've been told to self-quarantine, maybe that's a different story. We have to look at that stuff to try to keep it maintained.
So what are the along that line, what modifications would we make for a person who lives alone, who is quarantined, who needs things that are outside of their home? How do they go about getting those things? Are we going to help them? Are we going to send police cars to drop off supplies, or how's that work?
I'm sure going to say we would sure try to help. We're going to do everything we can to help them. They're going to need to they'll reach out to the county health district first, obviously, if that's how they got quarantined or if they self-quarantine. They're going to be speaking to the county health district, and then we're going to work with those people to try to help them meet every need that they have. If it's something as simple as going and picking up groceries for them or something. One, there's online services that do that now where you get that stuff delivered to your house. But two, if they don't have the ability to do that, we're going to try to help. We're going to try to help them. This is about trying to help everybody stay healthy and get better, and that's what we're going to do.
Last question. Who would determine what fine, if any, would be assessed?
I would say that would come back to the council.
Okay. So that will bypass the judge and come to the council on a case-by-case basis?
I would say yes.
Okay.
I mean, who would even assess that? Who's gonna be the one to issue a citation for that? I don't even know that we haven't got far enough along to even think about any of that stuff yet. We're just trying to get out in front of everything here. So yeah,
Okay.
I would be very careful with that.
That might be the county have to do
And
it.
it may be the
If
county.
they're the ones gonna be doing the tracking.
And the county health district is going to be the ones that are going to be talking to them. And the county health district is going to have, if somebody's severely violating that law, the county health district is probably going to be citing them before we even find out about it anyway. If that's, I think they're the ones that are going to be looking at that more than we are. We're just trying to keep our ordinance in line with state law.
Okay.
Now, any cases that we find out about, we're going to find out about through the county health district.
I'm gonna vote for this and go along because we need to make sure that we're on top of this. But philosophically, what you just said was that the county would be the one assessing the fines, which means this is something that's on the state level.
The law,
Right.
the public, it's out of the public health law, so it's on the state
Right.
law. Correct.
So just curious, why would we need to memorialize the whole portion of this ordinance that relates to fines if this is going to be handled according to you and Robert on a county/state level?
And I probably wouldn't have an issue with you striking that
I
section.
said I assume that the county would handle it. But if we don't put a teeth in something ordinance, then what's the point of even having it?
I don't think that we need to put a teeth in an ordinance that's designed to save people's lives. I don't think that we need to put a teeth in there. I will go along with it, Tink. I will. I'm going to vote for it. But I wanted to make my opinion on this be heard.
Sure.
There's absolutely no reason for us to be finding people who are quarantined or under investigation for coronavirus infection. That's silly to me. But I'll go along with it because I realize that you didn't put it in there. I'm done.
Anybody else? On the advice of our city attorney, going to ask for a motion regarding declaration of local state of disaster for the city of Lamarque, Texas. She has asked that we pass this and extend it for 45 days. If we have to come back and revisit this if this thing gets out of control and peaks, and from what we heard from today's conferences with the governor, et cetera, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Back to the ordinance, if you feel more comfortable in striking that, Mayor Pro Tem, I don't have a problem with that.
I don't have a problem with it either.
I want an assurance. I don't want to be inconsistent with the rest. I want to put a united front as a county and as a state. I do. All I'm suggesting is, and Tink has assured me that this will not be an issue for us in Lamarque.
Right.
I just want that assurance. I just don't think we should be finding people that are sick. If he's telling me that that's something that the state, nor do I want to be out of lockstep with the county.
Great. So I'll entertain a motion that authorize that we're going to pass this ordinance, number one, and we're going to label this ordinance for your records and for the minutes, E-2020-0001, coming from our city attorney. And I will sign the declaration depending on this vote for the initial 7 days and extend it 45 days as per our attorney. So I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll sign the declaration at this time. Any other business coming before us, sir?
No, sir.
I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed?